At this point of time, I hold a very strong observation that United States and all the Western countries are not able to support the issue of Tibet. And I've not come here thinking that the United States is going to support Tibet. In fact, the United States may actually discourage and take certain measures if the whole Tibetan freedom struggle becomes much stronger than it is today. And I say this because United States trade and economy is directly there in China. And in fact, the economy of China that everybody's talking about, the monolithic economic giant that has been presented, is largely a presentation. It's part of the economic propaganda. It's mostly making of the Western world and has very little to do with China. In fact, it's not China. It's the Western world's burden kept on China, which has actually become the victim of globalization. The Western world doesn't want to continue to do the dirty hand jobs, the jobs that the Western world had been doing for the past 100, 200 years. Now the Western world wants to own only the intellectual property and want to give the dirty job to somebody else. And this is happening in the most interesting post-colonial era. And the Chinese government has very easily co-opted to this idea of what is called bringing the jobs home. And if there is any truly patriotic Chinese, they should know, and they would know, that all that is happening in China is actually enslavement. It's not job, it's not modernity. The Chinese people are today only laborers. And when I say Chinese people, I'm talking about the large majority of Chinese workers and farmers who have been taken advantage of, mainly because of the disenfranchised population, the population who has no labor rights. And China is a country today where labor unions are created by the government to maintain tighter grip on the population. And labor unions in China is not to empower the laborers, it's not to give more rights to the laborers. In fact, in the Western world and also in India that I have seen, labor unions are mostly created by the people to protect the labor rights of the laborers. In China, it is just the opposite. Labor unions are created by the government so that they could maintain a tighter grip over the laborers. The Chinese government is completely insecure that the laborers may create the revolution. The promise that the Communist Party made and the ideals of the communist revolution starting from 1924 right up to the victory of the Communist Party in 1949, all those ideals are not in practice in China today. China today is a capitalist country which is much more rampant, much more ferocious and aggressive than the United States and many other Western countries. It's run in the name of communism, but it is one of the most blatant capitalist country. The money that has been made out of the disenfranchised 900 million population of China is today shared between the Chinese leaders and the Western corporate companies. And the Western corporate companies in the Western world are mostly running the governments in the Western world. Therefore, what we call globalization is actually the empowered corporate companies running the world, and there's very little space for individual freedom, and completely no freedom for the disenfranchised population who are taking advantage because of a kind of a totalitarian regime created by the Chinese leaders. So in this scenario, we actually see there is very little chances for the Tibetans to gather any support in the Western world. However, when the United States takes up the issues of human rights or religious rights, or when they speak about the Dalai Lama's idea of autonomy within China, I'm not pessimistic to say, but realistically these are again acts of politics where the United States is able to deal with China with a much more forceful bargaining when they raise the issues of human rights or the cause of autonomy as propagated by His Holiness. And both His Holiness and the exiled government may be living in this prospective world, but the Chinese government as well as the United States know that these are only acts of politics, and there is nothing actually substance in this kind of demands. The United States plays politics with human rights itself to make a better deal. The strength of the Tibetan freedom struggle lies in the Tibetan people. It's not Western world support or donations that we get, or some people like you who come and support, and when we go out in protests and you join, and these are of course internationally there is a sympathy, but in politics there is very little space for sympathy, and these sympathies are unable to really come into practice in the form of government's support. So where does this actually lead us to? Where are we today? Right from the beginning of 1949, when China invaded Tibet, and in 1959, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama had to leave Tibet behind and had to leave Tibet and seek asylum in India. From that time, it has purely been the Tibetan people who have firstly gone out and seen the outside world, and while in Tibet, the Tibetans themselves have lived in the most scary and difficult times, and without giving up, they continue to maintain the struggle. And as the struggle lived on, today we are here at a time where the Tibetan population, we have perhaps in the past 400 years, we are at the most politically aware situation. The Tibetan people have never been politically aware as we are today. First, two, that political awareness has also given us the education that all of us are common victims of Chinese invasion, and therefore there is a common solidarity within us, whether we are Tibetans living in the United States or India or Nepal or Bhutan, or Tibetans inside. That sense of unity has been a singular larger strength of the Tibetan freedom struggle. And this strength has been pushed again and again by Chinese oppression. The Chinese government very unintelligently has not been able to adapt or create new methods of oppression. In fact, they think that by use of force, I shouldn't say think, because the Communist Party has very little space to think. It has created a system where the system keeps on pushing the party to rule in certain ways. And this rigidity, in fact, I have always believed that this rigidity is going to cause the collapse of the Communist Party, the failure of the Communist Party, and therefore the government in China. Although certain assumptions continue to say that China is going to continue to become larger economic power, may even challenge China and United States and India. But certain other strategic analysts are also saying that the survival of China today is on a very, very thin thread of power holding, and that is mainly supported by United States and European nation. Otherwise, China may be collapsing any point of time. The prospects of making such analysis or such assumption in the Western world that China is forever going to grow and become larger economic power is actually a part of larger assumption in the Western world, how the Western world continues to predict developments of different countries. But one of the flaws of such assumptions is that they have to maintain that kind of prediction on the present day scenario on the assumption that this kind of development is going to continue without any obstacles or unseen events. And therefore, the problems with this kind of assumption has not seen the Arab Spring or the 2008 protests that happened in Tibet, nor have they seen the collapse of the former Soviet Union as a bloc. So therefore, it's dangerous to continue to predict that kind of continuation of projection of power without really keeping in the calculation the efforts of the human beings. And it has always been the efforts of the human beings that have created the revolutions.